Hello, my name is Forrest Neal. I'm a writer for Meditation Magazine, and today I have the fortunate opportunity of interviewing Sharon Salzberg. Sharon Salzberg is a New York Times bestselling author and teacher of Buddhist meditation practices in the West. In 1974, she co founded the Insight Meditation Society in Barre, Massachusetts, with Jack Kornfield and Joseph Goldstein. Today, we will be talking about the transformational power of her loving kindness practice. So, thank you so much, Sharon, for coming on today.
Oh, it's a great pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, I've really been looking forward to having this conversation for a long time, and I'm very excited to see how it goes. And fortunately, before we began this interview, we decided that starting off with a loving kindness practice would be a beautiful way to start this conversation today. So feel free to go ahead and lead the practice.
Great, thank you. I would invite everybody to sit comfortably, to close your eyes or not, however you feel most at ease, and just see if you can settle your energy, your attention into your body. And the way I like to do loving kindness practice is the silent repetition of certain phrases. So the phrases are like gift giving, they're offering to ourselves and to others. Instead of, for example, obsessing about our faults one more time, we actually kind of change channels and wish ourselves well. And with others, instead of taking them for granted or looking through them and kind of objectifying them, we take a moment to, in effect, look at them and wish them well through the phrases. It's not a practice where you have to try to conjure up or manufacture a special feeling. The power of the practice is actually from gathering all of our attention behind one phrase at a time. So I'll guide you through just one example of that. The first recipient classically is ourselves. So you might repeat phrases like, may I be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. Live with ease means in the things of day to day life, like livelihood and family, may it not be such a struggle. May I live with ease. May I be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. People often say to me, just because of the grammatical construction, like, who am I asking? We're not asking anybody anything. We're gift giving, we're offering. It's like you hand someone a birthday card and say, may you have a great year. It's a sense of blessing. May I be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. And if you find your attention wandering, which it commonly does, to the past, to the future, to judgment, to speculation, when you notice that you're no longer with the phrases, see if you can gently let go. It's what one of my teachers once called exercising the letting go muscle. See if you can gently let go, and without judgment or rancor, simply return your attention to the repetition of the phrases. So we let go and we begin again. And see if you can call to mind someone that we call a benefactor. That's someone who's helped you, Maybe they've helped you directly, they've helped pick you up when you've fallen down, or maybe they've inspired you from afar. This is like a symbol, a representation of the force of love for you. Could be an adult, could be a child, could be a pet. It's someone who, when you think of them, you smile. So if there's someone like that in your life, bring them here. You can get an image of them or say their name to yourself, get a feeling for their presence, and offer the phrases of loving kindness to them. Even if the words don't seem quite right, it doesn't matter because they're like the vehicle for the heart's energy. So they're serving us. May you be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. Maybe there's someone you know who's having a difficult time right now. Bring them here and offer the phrases of loving kindness to them. May you be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. Now let's have a gathering, just whoever comes to mind, friends, family, colleagues, those doing well, those not doing so well. We'll offer loving kindness to the collective, to the group. May you be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. And then all beings everywhere, all people, all creatures, all those in existence, near and far, known and unknown. May all beings be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes or lift your gaze, and we'll end the meditation.
Wow, that was absolutely spectacular.
Oh,
Thank
great.
you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all. All beings, thank you.
Yes. Those that was about 10 minutes or so,
Mhm.
and really it just seemed to fly by. um and for me, the loving kindness practice is, it always leaves me in a very loving space where I just feel um so complete, and I feel like, whatever happens to me throughout the day, that I'm approaching it from a compassionate space, and when I'm interacting with people, I'm more more so coming into the interaction with a loving intention, and it it just makes such a huge impact, just these 10 minutes, that it really, it has like a transformational effect. And so that's definitely something that I wanted to ask you about, especially coming right out of the loving kindness meditation. um, it seems as if it's almost like a natural psychedelic experience where in at certain times in meditation, you might be identifying certain aspects of your life or certain relationships that you have that make you feel uncomfortable in certain ways. And when you share your feelings of well-wishing, your loving intentions with those people or with those circumstances, it's like it flips your perspective of those things on its head.
Hmm.
And when your perspective changes like that, it changes how you feel. Those feelings change the decisions that you make, because now you feel connected in a way that you didn't before. And then all of a sudden, maybe the people who you've had difficulties with, they begin treating you differently because you are now approaching the situation more mindfully, more lovingly, and that causes just major changes in what we experience in life. And so I would like to know, why do you think that the loving kindness meditation practice appears to be so transformational?
Well, in the very classical perspective, within the Buddhist context, they say that the Buddha taught it as the antidote to fear. And so you think about
Mm,
that, like,
yeah.
uh, that, and it's also said, both, from that context and in more current research, that the part of the mind or the psyche that is most strongly impacted by doing loving kindness practice is the field of intention. And
Mhm.
so, if we have largely been governed by fear or alienation or resentment in our choices, in our decisions, in our actions, and we do a practice like loving kindness, that will be replaced by a feeling of connection. Now, that doesn't govern what we'll do, which is always very
Mhm.
contextual. Like, will you say yes? Will you say no? Will you lend this
Mhm.
person money? Will you not? Will you,
Mhm.
I mean, that's not almost like the arena of loving kindness. That's based on wisdom and discernment and what you see in
Mhm.
the moment in a particular relationship and all of that. But why you'll do it, will shift. And so that's like a huge upheaval in our lives to be coming from a place of connection and caring for ourselves and others.
Mhm. Absolutely. And as I was referring to, um, I've had experiences, especially during loving kindness, where I'll, intentionally think about somebody who might have said something that was hurtful to me, or um, somebody who I worked with at the time, and maybe just have difficulties at work. I remember I even had this idea to we had this board in the break room whenever I worked at a bookstore, and on the board, everyone could write notes about why they were grateful to work with uh, certain employees. And during a loving kindness practice, I just got the idea that I would write a note and post it on the board for every single person who I worked with, and that I wasn't just going to do it for the people who I was friends with, but that I would do it for literally everybody there. And whenever I did that, the people, everyone who I worked with saw it, and my bosses pulled me over and they were like, "Why did you do that?" And no one else had 20 something notes that they put on the board. They only had two or three that they wrote, but you kind of took up all the space on the board to write a note for everybody. And I just said that I just felt like I was in a loving space and that it was the right thing to do. And that whenever everyone saw that that happened, they kind of treated everybody else in the same way, leading or following the example. And I was wondering if you might have any stories of interesting challenges or difficult circumstances that you've encountered where having a loving kindness meditation practice really transformed what you were experiencing or how you felt um, because of those difficult circumstances.
Well, I mean, this is not. This is a sort of more generic, difficult circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
In that, certainly I had a strong, strong conditioning toward self judgment, and
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I always try to point out about loving kindness practice is that, let's say you have a regular meditation practice and you're doing it, 10 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day or something like that. You may not at all see the kind of progress or benefit in that 15 minutes. That
Mm-hmm.
it will really show up where it counts, which is in your life. But
Mm-hmm.
I've seen so many people get frustrated through the years because we tend to look at that 15-minute period each day. Say, well, I've been meditating for 2 months and I still get sleepy, or I still don't feel that great rush of love, or whatever we expect. But really, that's fine. And um, probably almost my signature story about loving kindness practice happened in 1976 when we first moved into the building that became the Insight Meditation Society. And I had first heard about loving kindness practice in January of 1971, which is when I first meditated. I was in India as a college student. I'd gone there to learn how to meditate. I did an intensive 10-day retreat, which was really like a mindfulness retreat led by
Mm-hmm.
S.N. Goenka. And right at the very end, the last thing he did was a short loving kindness practice. And it was the first time I'd ever heard of it. And I thought, wow, what is that? I was very taken with it. And I, thought, wow, I really want to learn more about this. And I didn't have the
Yeah.
opportunity to go into it more deeply with a teacher and guidance, although I kept reading about it and studying it. I, the other didn't happen for me until 1985 when I went to Burma, but this is 1976. So those of us who were here in the very beginning of the Insight Meditation Society, we had a month before there was any programming, and so we thought, okay, let's just do our own retreat for a month. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, hey, I've got a month. I don't have a teacher here to guide me through loving kindness, but by this time I know how to do it, so I'm gonna really do that. And so I spent the first week just doing loving kindness for myself, like all day long. May I be happy, may I be peaceful, whatever phrases I was using. And I felt
Mm-hmm.
absolutely nothing. It was like a completely dreary week. And then something happened to one of our friends in Boston, like in our larger community. And I had, amongst other people, we had to suddenly leave the retreat. And so I was up in one of the bathrooms getting ready to go to leave the retreat when I dropped this big jar of something, which just like went down on the tile floor and shattered, and the stuff went everywhere. And I can remember the very first thought that came up in my mind was, "You are really a klutz, but I love you." And I thought, look at that. You
Oh
could have
yeah.
given me anything in the course of that week, and I could not have honestly said something was happening, but something was happening. And, I pair that often with a story about someone taking me out to lunch in New York City once and saying, I just have to confess something. And I said, what? And
Uh-oh.
he said he had been doing loving kindness as his practice for about 3 years. And he said, whether that was on retreat or he was sitting every day at home. And he said, I just have to say that my experience sitting, like today, for example, is not that different than it was 3 years ago. But I'm like a different person. He said, I'm different with myself. I'm different with my family. I'm different with my community. I'm different ethically. And then he looked at me and he said, is that enough? And I said, yeah, I kind of think it's enough. So that's the way we discover the changes, is by looking at our lives.
Yes, yes. And that's so interesting because it's like, well, when we grow up, naturally things happen that cause us to feel uncomfortable, and we might have these memories that give us negative emotions for one reason or another because of how we have related with those experiences at that time. Um, and we're set up, we have everything that we need to um, experience those loving emotions in our lives just by looking at the material that we have within our own life experiences. I mean, you could probably sit for hours with this loving kindness practice and um, find an untold amount of things that pop up when you might ask yourself a question like, well, what makes me feel uncomfortable, or what relationships have I had previously that didn't go how I would have liked for them to have gone. We could have like an infinite number of responses to something like that, and therefore so much material just to express these loving emotions towards, and then to feel them. That kind of leads into my next question, which is that it's almost like it. I'm going to make a bit of a statement, and I would like for you to maybe correct me if I'm wrong in my understanding, and feel free to add your own input in this as well. But whenever we have these uncomfortable feelings, or feelings of fear or anger or frustration that we hold on to, it's as if there's like an egoic attachment to this feeling that we have, and that by practicing loving kindness, by letting go, it's like we're letting go of that negative attachment, so it frees us from being dragged around by our negative emotions that we might experience from time to time, and that it kind of gives us a clarity of perspective that really just makes it clear how awesome it is, the life that we're living, like how awesome it is the present moment that we're experiencing, even living the lives that we're living now. Sometimes it doesn't seem that awesome because we're just so caught up in the in our past, or things that we might be going through currently, but that by spreading loving kindness to these difficult circumstances, it allows us to let go of them so that we can be more present and appreciate life, in an amazing way for what it is. What would you say to a statement like that?
Well, I think there's lots of levels to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that over time we probably stop thinking of those particular emotions, greed, anger, fear, jealousy, uh,
Mm-hmm.
as negative and more recognize them as painful.
Yes.
They're negative if they overcome us, if we get overwhelmed by them, and especially if they drive us to action. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but the opposite extreme of that is, one of those feelings arises and we add shame and fear and dislike and,
Mm-hmm.
kind of identification, like this is really me, instead of seeing it as a changing state, and things like that. Um, so to be able to see those feelings, have compassion for ourselves instead of judgment, is also a function of greater loving kindness. And,
Mm-hmm.
and the compassion, a lot of times we confuse that kind of compassion with weakness. Like that means, oh, I'm just going to give
Yeah.
in and let it
Mm-hmm.
run rampant, and let it take me over and stuff like that. And it it really doesn't mean that at all. It's like a very particular way of relating, where we can recognize what's going on, realize that if it takes over, we're sunk in some way, and
Yeah.
it's just going to cause a lot of suffering. And we want a relationship to it. We're neither pushing it away nor getting lost in it, and that's what we do, And so it's
Mm-hmm.
how the loving kindness functions, and it points to one of the great controversies about loving kindness or compassion, which is the idea that it's a weakness, that it'll bring us down, that it'll have us. It's just a kind of sentimentality, and applied to ourselves, it means laziness. Applied to others, it means just giving in, and um, neither of those is true.
If you were to share this exercise with somebody who maybe hasn't had really any experience with meditation before,
Hmm.
but that they're interested, they understand what you're that they might hear this conversation, and they understand conceptually what we are talking about, and so they would like to learn more. And let's say you had the opportunity to guide this person through a loving kindness meditation so that they could really see for themselves the value of a practice like this, how would you guide them through that? Like, for example, whenever I first learned it, there was like we would prepare our minds and bodies. We would do some just basic stretches or do some yoga, and then we would do a silent meditation, and then those two things would kind of like supercharge our minds to be prepared for the loving kindness meditation. And I don't know if that's like maybe an an overly extreme way of practicing it, but if you wanted to share this with somebody in a very impactful way, how would you personally go about doing that?
Well, I think, a critical thing is to understand what to expect and what not to expect. Otherwise, you just
Mhm.
get discouraged. So, part of it is what I was talking about before. You might not see big changes in your formal practice each day,
Uh-huh.
but uh, you can look at your life. And I would say don't do that every second, like,
Yeah.
what seems to help people, including me, is having some kind of structure. Like, I'm going to make the experiment, I'm going to practice this. I'm going to say 12 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day
Mhm.
for a month. And at the
Mm.
end of the month, I'm just going to wait till then to check out. Well, that's interesting. How was I meeting this stranger? And how was I talking to myself? And how was I in this situation where I normally get really anxious and stuff like that? So you don't want to check it out like every single second because then you'll freak out, like, oh, was that enough?
Mhm.
Uh, but
Yeah.
it also has to be a reasonable structure. Like, you don't want to say I'm going to do this for 4 years and and then check it out.
Mhm.
And you don't want to say, I'm going to do this 6 hours a day because that's unreal.
Mhm.
And so I was talking to one neuroscientist who's very prominent in the field of meditation research. And he said in his lab that they found 7 to 9 minutes a day will actually change your brain. So that's measurable
Mm.
changes in an fMRI machine. And I was doing a Zoom presentation for this panel, and this other neuroscientist friend was on the panel, and I could see her face when I was quoting him, and she didn't look that happy. So I said to her, "Okay, what do you think?" And she said, "Well, my lab found 12 minutes a day." So, but
Mm.
nobody knows, and it's not an
Mhm.
exact number, and it may not be that healthy to go for the bare minimum. But
Yeah.
I think what's really interesting is that nobody is saying you have to do this 16 hours a day to get a result.
Mhm.
So if
Yeah.
you can commit to 15 minutes a day every day for 2 weeks or a month, whatever seems right to you, then that would be a way to approach it.
You are a New York Times best-selling author, so there are definitely significant goals that you have achieved with the great work that you are doing, and I'm wondering, because of the great goals that you have, maybe there's a couple of questions in here, but how are you able to manage um, the your ability to accomplish great things like becoming a New York Times bestselling author while maintaining a sense of self-compassion, that many people, we would maybe, I know for sure I do, and I'm sure many other people do as well. We have voices in our heads that are constantly telling us, how we messed up, and why we're not good enough whenever things don't go the way that we want them to. um, but it just seems not so much like a paradox, more so of an interesting predicament that the work that you are doing, has allowed you to experience great achievements like the New York Times bestselling list, while at the same time the material that you're writing about is talking about sharing love and self compassion, which it seems almost kind of contradictory in certain ways to one's ability to achieve, in that, we always want to do more or do better. um, and I guess I'm just wondering, like, how do you manage your ability to feel very self-compassionate while achieving goals that many people only achieve through constant desire to do better, and that things aren't actually good enough?
I think that the conventional understanding of self compassion is a kind of laziness or complacence, and I've
Mhm.
taught it, and I don't think there was a single time that I talked about it where someone hadn't raised their hands and said, "Well, that's just laziness," That's
Mhm.
like making a mistake and saying, "Oh, I'll forgive myself," and 2 seconds later you make another mistake and you say, "So what? I'll just forgive myself again." But I think it functions very differently than that. And I don't know particular research studies to talk about, but I'm told by scientists that the research very strongly points to the idea that if you do a performance study of any kind on somebody, that a harsh, punitive environment, either internal or external, will spike our performance, but briefly, then we'll crash. And that the
Mhm.
best way to have a sustained effort to make a change, to learn something new, to change a habit, to make progress in something is actually self compassion. That if you
Mm.
just go back to the meditation we did as an example,
Mhm.
you're sitting, your intention is to place your attention on the repetition of those phrases, and the next thing you know you're thinking about dinner, or like
Mhm.
uh, whether you're going to take a vacation or not. And then comes that moment when you realize, like, oh, I haven't repeated a phrase in some time. So what do we do in that moment? Very commonly, just by force of habit, we start judging ourselves. I can't do this
Mhm.
well, everyone else is better than I am. And they're not thinking. All these people I learned meditation with, they're sitting there in bliss, and I'm just a loser, and I'm just, I can't do this well, and I'm so distracted, and this is so awful, and we go on and on. And when we get lost in that, not only are we adding sometimes a considerable period of time to the distraction, but we're so demoralized, we're so exhausted, we don't have the ability to like pick up and start over. And that's why we call
Mhm.
meditation training like a resilience training. And the
Mhm.
secret ingredient of that is self-compassion. It helps us pick ourselves up, and that doesn't mean we're ignoring the problem. It's like maybe lessons learned, or this is what I need to do to try to make amends. But the really important thing is to be able to start over and like pick up the thread,
Mhm.
and keep going. And that's how we make progress. That's how we learn. And so, if you look at really what our habits tend to be in terms of just that kind of self judgment and self criticism, and realize that it's not useful, it's actually not a skillful way of being, then it becomes intriguing. Like, what happens when I blow it and I am kind to myself and I pick
Mhm.
myself up and start over? And you realize, oh, that's not laziness at all. That's like a
Mhm.
significantly different and far more effective way of getting something done. And I will just say, in terms of being a New York Times bestselling author, that is like a dream come true or something like that. That's not something I
Yeah.
think set out, at any rate, would ever set out to do, because so many things happen in the course of
Mhm.
publishing a book,
Mhm.
and so it's like great good fortune, and I'm very grateful for it. But at the same time, I never imagined it would happen, and I think I would have been immensely gratified by just somebody coming up and saying to me, your book was really helpful to me, or I used your book in this
Mhm.
really, really difficult period of my life. And It would be a shame if I was so hell bent on being a New York Times bestselling author and that didn't happen, and I then disregarded all these other things and thought, not good enough, you know?
Due to a technical difficulty, the remainder of this interview was not saved as a recording. I greatly enjoyed speaking with Sharon, and if you enjoyed our conversation, subscribe to Meditation Magazine at meditationmag.com to see more interviews like this one.